What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning The Dr. Vibe Show. I have hosted and produced over 2,000 epic conversations over the last 10 years. And what makes our conversations epic? We don't do interviews. We do conversations. What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Also know I'm a certified empowerment coach and president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. As always, blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And know that I'm the host of Epic Conversations, and the Dr. Vibe Show is the home of Epic Conversations. And we have another, new solo-wise to the Dr. Vibe Show. But he's been on a number of times on Sunday evenings on the Do You Know What Time It Is Epic Conversation. If you followed it all, that's where I have Black male thought leaders provide their comments, thoughts, opinions on news stories and current events. This gentleman's been on for the last few weeks, but I think he garners to be on his own with his journey. It's Melvin Lars. I could read for the next 3 hours all the things that he's done, but we're going to shortcut the shortcut here and just say he's a native of Shreveport, Louisiana, Bossier City, Shreveport, Louisiana. He's received several undergraduate and graduate degrees from various institutions. He's also a certified violence prevention and intervention specialist. He's received a certification and training through the prestigious Harvard University with Dr. Renee Prothro-Stith. He's also collaborated with Dr. Dick Gregory, the late Dr. Dick Gregory, on many projects. He's a leukemia survivor and was given less than 5% chance to survive acute leukemia. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. You can read the bio. Back in 1990 in November, and he is still alive and well today. He has written poetry books. He has written books. Tonight we're going to get a thumbnail of his journey, and also he's going to talk about his 2 books. So welcome to the Dr. Vibe Show, hand solo for the first time, Melvin Lars. What is up, Melvin?
Thank you, Dr. Vibe. Everything is great, my brother. How about yourself?
I am blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Very happy and blessed to finally have you on the Dr. Vibe Show. It's long overdue, but in its right time.
It's a pleasure to be on the show with you, Dr. Vibe.
Thank you so much.
A great pleasure.
Well, let's get right to it. Let's hear about growing up. Let's hear about what it was like growing up in Louisiana.
Well, you know, Dr. Vibe, growing up here in the South had its challenges, and it still have its challenges. Growing in the South, especially in the Jim Crow era, and going through the forced integration and that kind of thing, you not only work with challenges that you have in your immediate environment, you also deal with challenges that are outside your immediate environment, and there were many obstacles to hurdle. Unfortunately, I was born in a house that was fraught with domestic violence, and those were definitely some great challenges. We started to be employed as a younger man to assist with the household finances, I might say, once my mother divorced, and the integration through schools was definitely a challenge, and it was just a lot of things that were going on. Of course, it was not oblivious just to me. Many young men and women, unfortunately, went through many of these situations that we did. So it was very challenging from the beginning, having to sometimes never walk away from education, because that would be a lie, but having to sometimes put it somewhat on the shelf as you assisted, and you're working at an early age and getting off work late at night and then getting up early in the morning to go to school or catch the school bus and that kind of thing. So it was certainly a challenge. Certainly a challenge.
How did you survive, overcome growing up in a house that was an environment with domestic violence?
It was extremely difficult, and I share with people unabashedly is that it was a very embarrassing time. It was a very frustrating time. It was a time, unfortunately, and I would hope that if there's some young people watching, they do not try to follow my footsteps with that. I was at a point at one time just wanting to end the pain and frustration for my mother that I challenged the gentleman who was her husband at the time, and I would have done him great bodily harm had she allowed me to do so. And I'm very happy that she did not allow me to do so, because probably you and I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. So it was very, very challenging to have to endure that, to have to watch your mother endure that, to have to listen to other children, laugh and make fun and say things, oh, your mother had a black eye, she had a busted lip, and that kind of thing. So I fought a lot as a youngster. Never got in trouble in school, I might say, other than fighting. I fought a lot as a youngster because of the little snide remarks and the jokes and that type thing that were made. And well, maybe you don't know, but in here in Louisiana, and probably universally, when you say something about someone's mom, you're asking for a fight. So I did a lot of that. And that's actually, Dr. Vibe, if I can segue just briefly, how I got into boxing. One of my coaches was just so baffled with me being, quote, a model student, other than fighting, is that why was I fighting so much? And I never bothered to tell them that I was fighting because of the embarrassment and the frustration, and guys would be teasing me about my mom being beat up and that kind of thing. So, being a young, immature kid and being very sensitive about that, then of course my course of action would be to beat them up. And that was transitionally how I dealt with that. And it left a lot of mental scars. I'm not embarrassed to say that. Hopefully it'll help someone. It left a lot of mental scars because in all due respect, he's passed on now, and I do not want to vilify him as a human being, because quite honestly, a lot of young men and women that have step parents have horror stories of how the step parents treated them. Well, I have to say very honestly about my stepdad, he didn't really mistreat me physically like a lot of kids say, a lot of things they went through. But my thing always was, but if you're mistreating my mother, then you are mistreating me. So it was more of a mental mistreatment of how he treated my mother rather than him doing anything specifically to me. And that made it difficult as well, because I guess in a sick kind of way, I admired and had a lot of respect for him. He always provided, a lot of kids tell stories about being hungry. We were never hungry. A lot of kids tell stories about not having transportation. We always had cars, and we always had a television, things of that nature. So it was one of those situations where it was not that he was such a horrible person as far as taking care of the home, etc. But for some reason, and he was a vet, and they didn't even talk about post-traumatic stress syndrome during those times. I don't know if that may have been the case or whatever. So I want to be honest about this and just really just share it. But it was very difficult, to the point that I did challenge him, and I would have followed up on my threat, if you might call it that, but my mother did not allow me to do so by getting between the two of us and stopping this incident from taking place.
Were you the only child?
No, there were four of us.
Wow.
The irony about my whole growing up, Dr. Vibe, my mother was married. There were four of us. She was married to my older sister's dad, and she was married to the two younger ones, and I'm the only one in the bunch that was born out of wedlock.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. Going back in memory, what made your mother so special? What were some of those qualities that you remember from growing up? Because she seems like she was an incredible lady. Yes, and she is to this day. She always worked. I never heard her badmouth my dad. She endured and they were beatings. I mean to the point that sometimes he'd put her in the hospital, seriously. Wow. And things of that nature, break ribs, things that, so, and she always hung in there. And I remember one incident, I wanted a bicycle, and I remember very, very clearly, I was 7 years old, and they had bought, how they hide stuff for Christmas and the kids find it, etc. And my sister had this nice, beautiful bike that was hidden, and I noticed there wasn't one for me. And my mother
went to my stepdad, and I heard them arguing, and at that young, I'm saying, I want to tell her, hey, just leave it alone. I don't need a bicycle, because I knew and I felt very strongly that the end result would be him abusing her. But you know what? I wound up with the bicycle on Christmas morning. After all of that anxiety of wanting her just to leave it alone, he, relented, and I actually got the bike.
Wow, amazing. Yeah. So, a lot of your journey involves a lot of education.
Yes.
Where did you get the passion to follow this education? So much education. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just want to know where it came from.
From my mother. My mother did not finish high school. She was an 11th grade dropout. She got pregnant in high school. She was a teen mom, and her mom was a teen mom. She always stressed to go to school, get our education, pay attention, that kind of thing. And it was always discussed and talked about in my house. It was not an option as to whether or not you would go to school and at least get a high school diploma. Well, she always pushed that, and I was fortunate also to work with several coaches. And if I might, he's passed on now, but Coach Riley Stewart was very instrumental in me pursuing my education as well. Coach Jerry Tim Brooks, Coach Gerald Kimball. I was very fortunate to have coaches in my life that actually required us to educate ourselves. It was not just all about sports. So with my mother's encouragement and with my coaches, and then I had a personal love for it, and I just kept moving forward.
Nice. Athletics seem to be it's been a part of your journey. When did you start getting involved in athletics? Was it at a very young age?
Actually, I mentioned Coach Riley Stewart. True story, Dr. Vibe. I'm at a funeral, neighborhood funeral, 3rd grade, and this coach says to me, I was a little fat boy running around there in Bossier City, Louisiana, and he says to me, he said, well, you're going to play football for me when you get to high school, aren't you? Man, that was the proudest day of my young life. I said, yes, sir. And I never forgot that. And I started watching sports a lot on TV and that kind of thing. And I would watch gentlemen like John Mackey for the Baltimore Colts,
yep,
who I'm a very huge fan of. And I fell in love with the game, and I was fortunate enough to be blessed with having size, having speed, having ability, and having the desire. So I just kind of stayed with it.
Nice. So going through your younger years in education, what colleges did you go to after finishing high school?
Actually, after finishing high school, we were going through the integration phase, yeah, and we were at Airline High School the last year and a half. We had been at Charlotte Mitchell High School, was an all black school, went from 7th to 12th grade. When forced integration came in 1969, we had to go there. I actually did not get to have a scholarship offer. And this same gentleman, Coach Riley Stewart, made some telephone calls, and we had an opportunity. Myself and 2 other of my friends went to Mississippi Valley State University, the school of Jerry Rice. Of course, we are much older than Jerry. And we were offered scholarships after the coach watched the film, etc. I was very blessed to become a starter as a freshman. And that didn't happen back in the old days. And especially we were in the Southwest Athletic Conference with Grambling and Alcorn State and Jackson State and those schools. And freshmen did not just walk in there and play. You were lucky to play by the time you were a junior. Right. So I was just, I was very fortunate that I was blessed with the ability and with the desire, and I had the opportunity. Then I transferred to Louisiana Tech, which my mother was gravely ill, and I didn't think she was going to make it. I wanted to get closer to home. Walked onto the football team there, earned a scholarship there for a short time, and I guess that'll be another topic. I've always been, quote, an activist, unquote, and I guess I was kind of if you might say, a locker room lawyer.
Okay.
So they kind of dismissed me from the team. Okay. However, the good part, if there's any good part about it, I was fortunate enough to be on the team. We won a national championship that year before I got released at Louisiana Tech University. And I was fortunate enough to go with the Houston Oilers as a free agent, but I only made it through the 40-yard dash. I didn't do a lot of things. They sent me home, and I kept playing some minor league football and was fortunate enough to be picked up by the Raiders, and I got to be on the practice squad there for a while. They sent me home, and I just continued teaching.
What was it a disappointment not making the NFL, like as a full-fledged starter?
Huge disappointment. And I'll tell you why. You hear this story so often. Actually, the draft is coming up, I think, in a couple of days. Size, height, speed, etc. Unfortunately for me, I had everything except the height. Being a lineman, it didn't matter how you would be the better athlete. I mean, there was just this, and it's still this mindset to this day, is that if you did not fit the criteria, then no matter how well you played, some coach always had an excuse. You did well today, but guy's 6'9", he can just jump right over top of you. I mean, I heard all of that kind of stuff, but I'm dominating practices every day. And for a long time, Dr. Vibe, I was bitter. I am not embarrassed to say I was bitter, because I'm saying, man, I'm better than these guys that you got out here, but I'm the one getting cut and getting sent home. So yeah, I was very bitter about that for a while.
So after your football career ended, what was your next pursuit?
Well, actually, I had started teaching during the time I had been released from the Oilers, and we were very fortunate to have won the state championship just my second year in the coaching staff. I was not the head coach, but I was blessed to have some athletes that really wanted to play. So we did extremely well. Our defenses were always like in the top 10 in defense and that type thing. So I was very fortunate to get various jobs teaching and coaching. But one thing happened to me as for education that I will always cherish. I went to Los Angeles after I'd been released from the Raiders. I was looking for a job, went to LA Unified, and the HR director asked me to stay and meet with George McKenna. I had no clue that I was meeting with an educational guru. The George McKenna story aired in 1986. Denzel Washington played the part of George McKenna. I was his head football coach and an administrative assistant. And man, I learned so much from being with him. I actually got to sit at the feet of an individual that actually understood that education was about helping young men and women and not about us. And that, wow, I mean, to this day, it resonates throughout my bones.
Nice.
Yes.
Excellent. Tell us about the experience about working with Mr. McKenna and some memories and how he's influenced your life to this day.
He's influenced my life to this day, man. The memories were great. When he talked with me and sat me down, he just told me flat out, point blankly, he said, I looked at your application and it sounds like you are the kind of guy we're looking for. And I said, well, sir, I certainly hope that I am. And he said, he looked at me, he said, well, I don't need anybody that's hoping. I need somebody that knows. And quite honestly, I've always been very self-assured. I just didn't want to come across as being cocky. I knew that I was ready for the task. So after watching Dr. McKenna, I walked into Washington High School, and just as he told me, man, I mean, it was a war zone. I mean, well, by the time I got there, things had really calmed down. But I was very surprised to find out when I drove to the parking lot, there was a security guard assigned just to the teacher's parking lot, and there was razor wire around the barbed wire fence in the parking lot. Then I go in the building and I find out that the doors were all locked and no one would be in or out. So, and listening at the way he would address the students, the way he worked with us as individuals, a lot of people, and let me say this respectfully, I respect Mr. Clark to the highest. Dr. McKenna was the opposite when it came to his methods. He was very academic, just as Dr. Clark, but he was also very kind-spirited. He didn't talk to people in a harsh manner, etc. But his standards never wavered. They were very high. The kids had high respect for him. The teachers knew that he meant business, and it was just it really gave me an incentive to continue to carry his legacy even after. As a matter of fact, I had the pleasure, Dr. Vibe, I was principal in Youngstown, Ohio. I had the pleasure of bringing Dr. Kenna to Youngstown, Ohio to be able to do an assessment on our school and talk to my bosses about the kind of things that we needed and things of that nature. So that's just how strong the impact is that he has made in my life, and he still makes that, and that impact is still the same today.
Excellent. Well, we've got some people watching live here, and thanks very much for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule to watch some of this epic conversation, another epic conversation. One of the great people who support the Dr. Vibe show, and we support her back, Dr. Tachi, who hosts one of the best live streams on the planet. It's called Mediascope, and it's on every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on, gonna get this right, Periscope and Facebook Live. And then 5 p.m. she does a little warm-up show on Instagram Live, and it's all the best in media, tech, and pop culture. And check it out. And also, Dr. Tachi is going to be on the Dr. Vibe show this coming Wednesday evening, April 11th, and she's going to be joined by Leah Miller from Bolivia, and they're going to be having a wonderful conversation, and I'm hosting it. And the title of the conversation is, "Who Are Black Women's Friends?" So make sure you check that out. That's going to be a tri-country conversation. I'm based in Toronto. Dr. Tachi is based in Florida, in the United States, and Ms. Leah Miller is based in Bolivia. So we have 3 countries on the screen live. So let's get back to it. No problem. Anytime, Dr. Tachi. Anytime for you. So getting back to your journey.
Yes.
You seem to have enjoyed the education, and you seem like you did education. You went to a number of different locations. What were some of the positive memories you have of your journey in education?
The positive memories for me live to this day. That's another thing Dr. McKenna was sharing with me about being a superintendent. I did mention to him that my desire was to become a superintendent. And he said, well, you need to get as much experience as you can in as many places as you can so that you can really address the needs of students. So and that was part of my journey. I worked in Texas. I worked in Ohio. I worked in Cleveland. Obviously, I worked in Los Angeles with Dr. McKenna. I worked in Louisiana, etc. And all along that road, before I met Dr. McKenna, it was, let me say this, it was just in my bones. But I would get so frustrated sometimes because I would work with individuals, how can I say this nicely, that sometimes didn't seem to understand that we were there to help the children and that it was not about us. Unfortunately, I worked with individuals that too many times thought it was about them more than they did to understand that it was about the children. So I have carried that with me. There's a name in education they call fix-it principle and that kind of thing. So following in Dr. McKenna's footsteps, I've been very fortunate to have worked in schools where I have that title as being a successful fix-it principal and helping to turn schools around and that kind of thing. In the city of Michigan, down in Saginaw, Buena Vista, there was some craziness going on, but we was blessed to have teachers and students that wanted to do better, and we were able to help with that situation. Then Youngstown, Ohio, I was hired to just maintain a school because they were building a mega school, and they had planned to close that school in a year, and I thought I was just going to be there a year to maintain it. But lo and behold, they were just shocked at how the change was coming about in the school. And that was all a result of Dr. McKenna's training with me, because that's all I knew. And I knew when I accepted the job that I was not going to just be a police person, but we were going to change the school. Cleveland, Ohio, same thing. So Dr. McKenna's stamp is all over this big man right here, brother.
Okay. What inspired you to get a certification?
I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Well, sorry about that. What inspired you to get your certification in violence prevention intervention?
Unfortunately, Dr. Vibe, I worked with a lot of young men that were impressed with money, and they would join gangs and all of that kind of craziness. And when you work with these young men, a lot of times when you try to work with them and you work with other people, the young men didn't, but the other people like to try to question your credentials. Well, my credentials were experience. However, I wanted to have a certification from actual proven professionals, and Dr. Renee Prothro-Stith was offering some workshops and that kind of thing and certifications. And actually, my wife and I both became certified violence prevention intervention specialists. And I've done extensive work with gangs. That's how Mr. Gregory and I met. That's how, dare I say, I don't call him Jim Brown. That's how Mr. Jim Brown and I met, and that kind of thing. And so it is just something that I felt very strongly that needed to happen. I can't tell you how many funerals I've had to go to, how many mothers we've had to soothe, how many times we've had to get young men to understand that what they were doing was just ruining their lives. So that is really what interested me in getting there. I wanted to help save lives.
Excellent. Well, we'll certainly have a future conversation, epic conversation about your work in that area, because I know you have a lot of evaluate experience you'd love to share with our audience. Just want to pull out a few more things of your journey, the experiences working with Jim Brown and also the late Dick Gregory.
Listen, both were great, but I would like to address the late Dick Gregory first. Mr. Gregory, man, this guy is genuine as they get. As you may or may not be familiar, he was going around the country at one time trying to help rid neighborhoods of drugs and things of that nature. The school that I was working at here in Shreveport, and I'll give him a plug, Green Oaks High School, had always been having some major issues. I went and joined Mr. Gregory at some marches he was doing. I invited him to come to my school to address our student body and I asked him could I do some work with him, and of course he granted me the right to do that. And he and I started working together, started marching, doing some marches and addressing young men about the ills of gang violence and things of that nature. And he never wavered. As a matter of fact, when I retired as a principal from Youngstown, and I was doing, and I do male empowerment conferences, by the way, I brought Mr. Gregory in to be my keynote speaker down in down in Muskegon, Michigan in 2009, I think it was. So we just grew, we had a bond and we grew a great relationship. And with Mr. Brown, I also brought him to, I get my states in Michigan mixed up so much, I've been in so many places, to Saginaw, because to help to address gang violence and all that kind of thing. And we kind of partnered with the Amer-I-Can Program. So I've been very blessed to have had a very enriched life of working with men that were doing positive things. And dare I say, and please allow me to say, this kid that was reared in Bossier City, Louisiana, that was so frustrated and thought he may have to take someone's life for her mother to keep her life, for his mother to keep her life, and to have had these experiences with these gentlemen, man, is just something I never dreamed of.
Wow. That's fantastic. That is a great thing. Actually, I'm going to give a pop quiz. Let's see. What famous female athlete was born in Saginaw, Michigan?
Saginaw, Michigan.
Saginaw,
oh, man.
I'm pretty sure she was born in this city. Famous, one of the greatest female athletes of our time, maybe of all time.
I don't know of one that was born there, but I'm personal friend with her grandmother's passed on now. But Serena and Venus Williams'
there
grandmother.
You go. You are correct.
Yeah, listen. That's how I met them, Dr. Vibe. I was principal at the high school, and their mom was working with me because their cousins were going to my school, and then their grandmother. They were having a family reunion, and the grandmother said to me, she said, I want you, I got ahead of myself. The grandmother had said to me that she wanted me to come to the family reunion to meet her daughters. So I was reluctant. And quite honestly, I was trying to think of an excuse not to go.
Why?
Yeah, because I did not know, first of all, that it was Venus and Serena, but secondly, being a new principal in town, only had been there a year working with people, I'm kind of a loner. You would not believe that as much as I talk, but I'm kind of a loner. So when Ms. Orsine invited me, I reluctantly went. She never told me who her grandkids were or anything. I get to the reunion. We're sitting there, and then she says, "Oh, Mr. Lars, come on over here, come on over." So I go. She said, "I want you to meet my granddaughters." Guess who they were? Wow. Venus and Serena. And their cousins who still live in Saginaw are very close friends with us, and we still have connections to this day. Mr. and Mrs. Young and their cousins were students at my school, etc. So they were not born in Saginaw. Their mom was. And their dad was born in Coshada, Louisiana, which is only a few miles from me.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow. And how old were they when you met them? Approximately.
They were teenagers. They were
goodness.
They were just becoming famous. As a matter of fact, they were still wearing their trademark beads in their hair at the time.
Were you able to get even a picture?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll send you some.
Wow.
Yes. I have pictures with both Venus and Serena. Yes,
Wow.
and actually I have phone numbers.
Uh-oh.
Believe it or not.
Oh, okay. All right. No problem. We'll leave it there. I don't.
Okay.
We'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
We'll just leave it at that. Dr. Tatch is saying that you have great stories. You are a great storyteller, my friend.
Wow. Well, give Dr. Tachi my best. I appreciate that.
And big time. Well, let's get into some of these books.
Okay, let's do.
Which one would you like to share with us first?
I'd like to first start with Dying on My Feet. My Journey Times 2. And the reason I want to start with Dying on My Feet, My Journey Times 2, and I'll be real brief. In 1990, you mentioned that in the opening conversation, I was diagnosed with acute promyelocytic leukemia. Well, at this time, a very dear friend of mine, Dr. Larry Daniels, was our team doctor. I've been complaining about a rash in my chest. Anyway, he'd given me some topical creams, that type thing. They weren't working, and I was having some other symptoms, but you know how macho we are, so I didn't mention them to him. I was taking a group of football players to the clinic to be treated by Dr. Daniels, and I kept complaining about, man, the salve you gave me didn't work, blah, blah. So he said, well, maybe you have a food allergy. Let me give you a blood test. And I'm kind of squeamish about needles, and I'm sitting clowning. And then so he said, oh, man, come on, let me give you a blood. I said, okay. So anyway, the nurse comes in, takes my blood, goes out. Dr. Daniels and I sitting there talking. She comes back to the door, and she looks very strangely, and she asks him to come to the door. Then I hear her ask him, she said, what's wrong with your friend? I don't think she's talking about me. And so he said, what do you mean? He said, there's nothing wrong with my friend. She said, I think you better come see these lab results. So he goes down and he comes back in. He has a very strange look on his face. And he says, Melvin, I need Nurse Matthews, her name, Matthews. I need Nurse Matthews to take some more blood. And again, Dr. Vibe, I'm still clowning. Man, I don't want no blah. So I lament. She takes the blood. She comes back with the same look on her face. Then, and all this is happening within 2 hours span. Then he says to me, I've already called Dr. Byron. I need you to go see him immediately. He's an oncologist. Well, of course, I knew what an oncologist was. I said, an oncologist? He said, yeah. I said, well, how are my players going to get back to school? And he said, don't worry about the players. We'll get them back to school. I go see Dr. Byron. They take the blood test. They confirm. Then they send me over to an ophthalmologist. The ophthalmologist look in my eyes. Blood is leaking in my eye detector. So anyway, the Dying on My Feet was inspired because I was literally dying on my feet, had no clue. Still going to work every day, still coaching my players. Once I found out I had acute promyelocytic leukemia, I continued to push on. I'd gone through chemo several times back and forth. They gave me no chance of survival. They talked about different kinds of treatments and told me they would all be experimental. Told, hey, don't go to work. If you go to work, go half a day, all that stuff. I still went every day because the area that I was working in, Dr. Vibe, was one of those areas that, people like to malign. Well, those kids don't want to learn this, that, or the other. So I said, well, heck, if I walk out on the kids, who in the world are they going to have? So I continued to do what I normally do. And I said, I want to write a book of inspiration. And sometimes I know the title scare people because they say, I don't want to read about anybody dying, but it's not about me dying at all. It's about the process in which you fight through and you continue to go and you continue to move, even though you are facing some challenges. So that's actually how the title came about, Dying on My Feet.
And how long did it take you to write it? And was it an easy write?
It was not an easy write at all. I actually started writing this book in 1995, and I just finished it in 2016, actually. And the reason I just finished it is because I could never quite decide how I wanted to present it. And the reason I couldn't decide how I wanted to present it because, as I stated, I did not want it to be a woe is me. And I wanted it to inspire people, to uplift people, and to get them to understand that there really is a power stronger than all of us. Because, Dr. Vibe, medically, I'm not supposed to be sitting here talking to you. And I always encourage people. I said, if you go right now and look up acute promyelocytic leukemia, you might find a paragraph. And it immediately starts talking about myeloid and myeloma and all of that because it's a very rare form of leukemia. And I'm talking about MD Anderson diagnosed me with this. MD Anderson Cancer Center diagnosed me with the same thing. The Shreveport Cancer Center in Shreveport diagnosed me with the same thing. When I went to the Salmon Cancer Treatment Center in Dallas, Texas. They were trying to experiment. They just threw up their hands, quite honestly. I was supposed to be in the hospital 9 months. They just threw up their hands because nothing was working. They couldn't do some of the experiments they wanted to do because they couldn't get enough bone marrow. So pretty much they sent me home to die, and I'm still here.
So they sent me home to die, and I'm still here. So
yes, sir.
Okay, what? So how did you keep on keeping on?
Well, you know what? For me to say to people that it wasn't a challenge and I didn't sometimes think, why me? That would be the biggest lie I could tell you. I decided that I was just going to go until I dropped. And I made my mind up that, hey, I'm not going to go and sit in a dark room and turn off the lights. I'm not going to, I don't want anybody giving me no sympathy, all that kind of thing. I'm just going to go until I drop. And if I drop on the football field, just cart me on off. They'll have somebody in my place in the morning. And that's what I even told my football players, I was out there, man, the chemo had taken all my hair out. Sometimes I had to go behind the bleachers to, that chemo makes you regurgitate and all that kind of stuff. But I got to tell you this, Dr. Vibe. The joke was on me. I've been a big man all of my life. So the oncologist comes in and he started telling me all this stuff. Then he says, well, Mr. Lars, you probably lose between 80 and 100 pounds. And, he's going on. And people say, well, this guy's got to be a completely idiot. Because I'm sitting there thinking, wow, 80 or 100 pounds. I've been a big man all of my life. Wow, that'd be pretty cool to lose. And I had to laugh at myself to this day. Dr. Vibe, I lost 16 pounds.
Oh, my.
Throughout the whole process. Wow. 16 pounds. I'm talking about to the point of having to be fed intravenously. I couldn't take down food after a while. They had to put a tube in me. It was just crazy, man. And that's why I tell people that Dying on My Feet is a book of inspiration. It has nothing to do with dying. But I felt very strongly about that title, so I went with it.
Wow. What was, during the journey of writing the book?
Yes.
Did you ever feel like quitting writing it?
Yes. And one reason is a lot of things it was very difficult sometimes remembering some of the events because chemotherapy does sometimes affect your memory. And that's another part of the story. I kept telling the oncologist, I said, man, I'm having memory issues. And oh, no, chemo doesn't cause that. So I happened to be reading the newspaper, actually, and it was a journal out of England. And it was on the back page. And they were seeking individuals that had gone through chemotherapy to see had they had memory issues. And I was like a little kid. I said, I knew it. I knew I wasn't the only one. So now, of course, they agree. So it was difficult from the point that sometimes when I was writing the book, I would think back about some of the ordeals that I went through and that kind of thing. And quite frankly, sometimes I get a little scared. It's like, man, and then I say, hey, man, hey, it is what it is. So it was a challenge, and I just kind of put it aside for a long time. And then, quite honestly, my wife pushed me to write it. She said, hey, you need to write that. You keep saying, she said, you've been saying for 20 years, you're going to write that book. You need to get. And I told her, I said, but I don't even have enough stuff to put in there. I said, it'd be a pamphlet. And I was very serious. I said, she said, all the things you went through. And I said, but I don't want it to be a book about dying. So then I said, okay, what I'm going to, and God gave me the vision. And people get sometimes offended when you use God. But I said, I want to write it. I don't want to write an autobiography, but I want to write an autobiography-esque to kind of share with them from the time of being 8 years on, all the challenges that I've been met with and how I persevered and I went through it, etc. So that's how I was able to hang in there, man. I just had to keep thinking back to the positive aspects of all of the things that I've been dealing with and was still able to overcome.
I always ask this conversation piece with writers, especially when they have a journey and just writing their book. What was it like holding the first finished copy?
Man, listen, it was, to say like heaven, I can't say I've never been there, but I would say the view that we've been given of heaven, it was like heaven. Actually I designed the cover and everything. And I was just really, really proud of it, quite honestly, because the cover really speaks to a lot of what I was feeling. And when I sent it to the young lady, to the graphic artist, I said, listen, this is what I want on the book. and she couldn't seem to find stuff. So I started searching around because I can't draw very well, and I wanted to. And when I got the book, it was very, very, very humbling, for one. And then I guess, like most writers, I say, so who's going to read it? You know, I didn't even think about that. I said, so who's going to read it? Am I going to sell any? And that kind of thing. You know, I guess maybe, to be very honest, maybe that was kind of vain. You know, obviously I was hoping I would sell some, but I really wanted, and I, you know, a lot of times people say, oh, well, it's not about the money. It was twofold. I hoped that it would sell well, but I really, really, really can say to you this night, on April 9th, 2018, I really wanted to help inspire people to understand that when someone gives you their rendition of what's going to happen to you, they do not have the last word. And that's what kept me going. I did not know exactly what was going to happen, but I just believed that all the oncologists that were talking, all of the people who had family members that had gone on before, and Dr. Vibe, there have been, I know, just in the last 2-3 years, 3 or 4 of my personal family members have gone away because of cancer. My great-grandmother passed because of cancer. My mother is a double mastectomy survivor.
Wow.
My aunt just passed away of breast cancer. Another one had breast cancer. My uncle Bossier had brain cancer. And so it's just, my family has been riddled with it, and I don't understand why God decided to leave me. But I'm here, man, and I'm rolling. That's why I say, you know, people, I would love to sell 1 million copies, but I want people to be inspired.
Nice. Well, let's flip it to the other book you want to share with us tonight.
Yes. I want to talk about my latest book, Mind Muscle. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm hung up on Mind Muscle. Mothers and Their Smen. Mothers and Their Smen was another book I started writing mentally about 35, 40 years ago. And the reason I started writing that book mentally is because I thought about all the things that my mother had gone through, and I thought about all of the things you would hear about single mothers and about how the neighborhoods kids come from, and they're not going to be this and they're not going to be that. Then when I started teaching and coaching, I would meet and I was very fortunate to work in blue ribbon schools, to work in upper middle class schools, and to work in, quote, ghetto schools, unquote. And what I found, Dr. Vibe, was that the mothers all thought virtually the same about a lot of things when it came to rearing their children, especially their sons. I was always, quote, the disciplinarian. So I got to meet with a lot of moms, and I'm well-educated moms. Some moms were not educated as well. Moms that were married, moms, unfortunately, that were widowed, and that kind of thing. So I was blessed to have a plethora of moms that I've talked to over the years, and I would constantly hear, well, I just want them to be safe. I just want them to have a good education. You know, I want them to stay out of trouble. I don't want to be like his dad. You know, I want him to grow up and be a good husband, and all these kinds of things. And I hear people talk about parenting and all of that kind of thing, and people would quickly say, well, you know, there's no guide. And I'm saying in my head, but yeah, there's no guide, but moms have that innate thing about them. So I was driven to write Mothers and Their Smen because many times, as was my case, men are forced into, quote, manhood, unquote, before they're ready to as a protector, as a provider, at least assist with providing, as being the leader, as looking out for the younger siblings and that kind of thing. And I wanted to know what kind of effect that moms think that may have had on their sons. There's also a chapter in my book about sons of surviving sons, and I use that very genuinely, surviving sons of mothers of domestic violence, because unfortunately sons have lost their lives trying to defend their moms, and I happen to be a surviving son of that scenario. So I wanted a compilation of things, and when I put out my survey, I wanted to hear from some moms that I hadn't had the opportunity to meet. And I've been very blessed to talk to Asian moms, to talk to Latino moms, to talk to Caucasian moms, talk to black moms, etc. And I'm telling you, Dr. Vibe, I'm so proud of that book because it really verifies something for me, because my mother, she's truly a hero. And I said, here's this woman, did not have a high school diploma. She was born to a teen mom. She had several marriages. She's made a lot of mistakes in her life. and I don't think my siblings and I came out too badly. So I wanted to make some parallels in rearing sons, because there's a lot of conversation about men, and as you know, in the Good Men Project, we talk about that a lot. And but we never admit this one single thing, that even though I do a conference called Dad's in the House, but he's not home. So even though there's a man in the house, there's very little rearing of the children that is actually done by the man. Yeah, many of them, they'll take us fishing, they'll take us to play ball and that kind of thing. But when it comes to the actual rearing of young men, many times, more often than not, the male is not there to actually rear us. They may give a pep talk, or they may talk about a ball game and things like that. So I wanted to highlight mothers and their men, because so many times we are forced to be men from what we understand as being a man before we are ready. And our moms don't really know what a man is. They only know what they've seen, what they've heard, what they've been forced to live with, and that kind of thing. So they kind of infuse that on you. And then all at the same time, you're kind of like, okay, but this man over here does it differently. This man over here does it differently. My coach does it differently. So I want to highlight that.
In your conversations with women from all different backgrounds, did you hear some common themes?
Yes. Common themes were, I want him to be safe. I want him to be productive. I want him to be a good husband. I want him to be a good father. That was common throughout. It was common throughout. But one thing that did catch me by surprise, a lot of my mothers who were married, a lot of my mothers who were well educated and that kind of thing, when I asked the question, one question I asked was about being, quote, the man of the house if something happened to the father, if there was a divorce or if he happened to have been deceased or whatever. And so many of them said, well, yeah, in a way, I feel that he should be the lead or the head. And I'm saying, no, he's a kid. He doesn't know what being a man is. So I did find that kind of shocking. Now, that was not every mother.
Right.
But it was a large number of mothers that actually feel that the son is supposed to somehow turn into this hero of the family. And I guess it's expected. And that was one of my driving forces, because I was torn a lot, because I often say, Dr. Vibe, and I'm very serious about this, when I talk with my friends, and I say, I wonder sometimes what kind of education I really could have gotten if I wasn't working all the time as a high school teenager, getting out of school, going to work at 4 o'clock, getting off at midnight. By the time I get a bath and try to get my homework, it's time to get up and catch the bus and that kind of thing. So a lot of stuff I did just enough to get by, and I admit that very openly. Even when I was in college playing football, many times I did just enough to get by because I was a, quote, an illegal football player. I had a job. They don't allow you to work. The NCAA doesn't allow you to work. But in the financial state that my family was in, I still, and I don't mind naming them, Church's Fried Chicken. I got a job. I would go to that late shift at Church's Fried Chicken, that kind of thing. And I often wonder, I said, wow, I wonder what kind of student could I really have been if I could have just concentrated on my studies instead of having to try to be a man before I was ready.
Wow. Wow.
And that's what drove me to write that book.
Which of the two books was easier to write?
Neither.
I thought so.
Neither. I would love to pick out one that was easy to write. The Dying on My Feet was not easy because it brought back a lot of memories. Sometimes I try to remember things that transpired, and it would really, I really found out, Dr. Vibe, and I'm admitting this live, I really found out how strong I was, but also how weak I was, because there were things that anger me to this day that happened at 10, 11, 12 years old of seeing my mother so brutally treated, right, and things like that. And I thought I had gotten over it. And when I started reminiscing about those things, I would be angry. At one time, I got to tell this story. I got so, and he had passed away. I got so angry. I said, man, I need to go and dig him up and beat his. I'm serious. I thought about all of the terror I used to see my poor mother go through, and the screams and that kind of thing, and the hospital visits. And so it was tough, man, because it brought back things that I thought I had worked through, to be very honest. Now, Mothers in Their Smin was kind of the same way, because I thought about my mother and all the things she had endured, and how society frowns upon women that have multiple mates, whether they're married or not, women that have children at their teenage years, women that are not well educated, etc. And I always thought, man, my mother's a great person. Yeah, life dealt her a lot of negative things, but she is a great person. So it was difficult in that manner, and seeing other women and the things they go through, and having lived through that, it was difficult. Yes.
If your father was alive today, two-part conversation piece. One, would you speak with him? And if you spoke with him, what would you tell him?
You know what? I would revisit a conversation I had with him some years ago, in my teenage years. The night I challenged him, he clearly said, yeah, I know you want to whoop my ass. And I said, no, man. I said, he's my stepdad. I said, really, man, you've been pretty good to me. I said, I don't want to hurt you, but I can't, and I will not let you continue to hurt my mother. And so as you asked that question, I would sit down and talk to him about that today in depth. He and I did have cordial conversations over the years and that kind of thing. And sometimes he would look at me really strangely, as if to say, now, is this guy pulling my leg, or is he really serious? Because I was trying to heal myself. Because and as I said earlier, the conversation I would have, because I was torn. I've heard so many stories and seen so many kids that were mistreated personally by the step parent. But he didn't do that. But he was hurting my mother. So it was a mental hurt. He didn't deny me anything. My mother argued with him. He got me to bite. They got me to bite, and things like that. One time, right at the end of integration, there was a lot of craziness going on. I walked off the football team. And I heard my mother tell him about it when I got home. I'm still like 15 years old. And he actually asked me what was wrong, and do you need me to go talk to the coaches? So it wasn't that he wasn't a decent guy in his own right. That's what I'm saying, is that Korean War and all that kind of stuff. Nobody talked about post-traumatic stress syndrome and things like that. So I have to be honest, as an adult, now that I've gotten older, and as we talk about education, I don't know if that may have been some of the issues, because he wasn't a terrible guy on that end. But but anytime you beating a woman, I'm sorry, Dr. Vibe, I just have no tolerance for that. I don't think there's any excuse for it. But if it's a mental illness, then that needs to be addressed as well. So that would be the conversation. It would be a difficult conversation, because I honestly do not think that he understood the damage that he was doing, even to the point my baby sister, who's passed on now, she would get so nervous they'd have to put her in the hospital, man. She'd just be a nervous wreck and all that. I mean, it was crazy at my house, Dr. Vibe, wow, for a time until I approached him, and my mother saw that if she did not leave, then one of us, something was going to happen seriously. That's the only thing that made her leave.
Well, Dr. Touch is saying your resilience is amazing. She has a question for you. She's asking you, how did your mother's abuse affect your outlook on life?
Listen, man, her abuse, I can't say that I'm the quintessential man. No man can say that. But I don't care what a woman is doing. She would have to, as God is my witness, I would have to be literally trying to save my life to ever put my fist to her, slap her, kick her, push her, and that kind of thing. Because, and that's what I want to say to Dr. Tashi. Men make all kind of excuses. I've even heard women say, well, she didn't have any business hitting him. But physically, we are already the winner, because we're much bigger, we're much stronger. Many of us, as boys, we wrestle, we box, we fight. So we already have the prowess to defeat them. And I feel very, very strongly that it just embedded more deeply in me not to be an abuser. When I saw a person that I love so dearly had to go through that craziness. And that's why I say all the time, As a matter of fact, when I'm doing workshops, psychologists say, well, kids usually react the way they were reared. And I say, that's the craziest thing in the world to me. I would not dare want to put any woman through that. If you can't come home and be comfortable, where can you go? So that's one area that I disagreed with the psychologists and psychiatrists very strongly. Because just as Dr. Tosh is asking that question, because that's the last thing that I would want to have happen in the house that I live in, that my woman come home, my wife comes home, and she have to endure me knocking her around, kicking her around. It's insane to me.
Okay.
So that's my answer.
Excellent. How have your two books impacted you?
They've impacted me both positively and negatively. Negatively in that it brought back memories that I thought I had put away. Positively in that it helped me to grow, helped me to open my eyes. It helps me to help other people even better, because people go through so many, and the reason that it helps me is because, unfortunately, so many times human beings are so busy passing judgment, we can't see the hurting person. I'm not a certified medical professionalist or anything of that nature, but it has helped me. It helps me see the hurting person. It helps me to sit down and have a conversation and not judge, and be able to try to share some things and to try to help direct them in different areas and things of that nature. It helps me to open my eyes as to if I'm saying negative things or passing judgment, which I try very hard not to do, is that, you don't know the whole story. Maybe you can help the person that you're passing judgment on to get some help with that issue, whatever that issue might be, rather than ridicule them and just shun them altogether.
Excellent. Well, I think we're going to end it here because we could go on for 3 more hours.
Okay.
First, actually, what sort of final words do you have for there's so much you've been through.
Yes.
And you've overcome.
Yes.
What words would you like to leave for our audience?
I'd like to leave 2 words: keep swinging. See, I have a motto that's called Dare to Be Positive, and I tell people all the time, the mirror reflects an image, but the soul holds the truth. And I sometimes I anger people as I leave this final word, because they say, well, just look at the man in the mirror. I said, no, do not do that. Well, why shouldn't I do that? I said, because it's human nature. When we look in the mirror, we don't go into our psyche. We start looking to see if there are pimples on our face, if our hair is just right, etc. So I leave that word, man. Just keep swinging and understand that no matter how much it has become so mundane now, and such an overused phrase to say it's going to get better. It could be worse, but it actually can get better. I'm only one of millions who have lived and who have doubted. Let me speak for Melvin Lars. Many times it's like, man, come on, God. I'm not going to lie. They're like, come on, God. I mean, come on now. Okay. But I just keep hanging and I keep swinging. And sooner or later, you will land a good punch that's not going to hurt anyone, but will help someone.
Excellent. Well, Melvin, would like to thank you for taking the time to share, like I said, a thumbnail of your journey with us tonight. If people want to get in contact with you, if they want to get your books, how can they do that?
Yeah, they can get the books from Barnes & Noble. They also can go to my website, dyingonmyfeet.com. They also can go to WeBuyBlack/Melvin Lars. And they can also contact me. I like to autograph every book that I send out. I once had one person say, man, you out of your mind. If you sell as many books as you want to sell, you'll be autographing books all day. I said, that's the purpose. So I'd like to autograph them. They can Barnes & Nobles, excuse me, dyingonmyfeet.com, WeBuyBlack/Melvin Lars, or they can simply send me an email and I'll give them more information how to get one. Is abrighterfuture91@gmail.com.
Excellent.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, it is Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of epic conversations. And I'm the host of Epic Conversations. If you would like to catch replays of epic conversation like this, There's over 400 of them on YouTube. Go to YouTube, put in the search engine the space dr period space VIBE space SHOW, and you can catch replays of over 400 epic conversations that I've been blessed to host. If you want to listen to replays, audio replays of my epic conversations, you can catch them at my website, thedrvibeshow.com. Also at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Tuned In Radio, Google Play Music, and iHeartRadio. You can catch selected audio replays at thegoodmenproject.com, where you'll catch myself and Melvin were regular contributors. Also, a big shout out to Lisa. We know who you're talking about. Good old Lisa at the Good Men Project, who introduced me to Melvin. So
yes,
I want to say
I'm very appreciative.
Yeah, very, very, very wonderful lady at the Good Men Project. And just to plug the Good Men Project, if you want to find out what's on the hearts and minds of men, go to thegoodmenproject.com. They will tell you and give you stories like you wouldn't believe. The lady's name is Lisa N. Blacker. She's one of the executive editors of the Good Men Project. Getting back to Dr. Vibe, if you would like to get some empowerment coaching, I can certainly do that for you. I offer a complimentary 30-minute session. You can touch base with me via Twitter at drvibeshow, email dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. And you can go to my website, go to the top, click on Connect or Contact Dr. Vibe, and you'll get the opportunity to email me, send me an audio message, and even send me a video message. I'm a brand ambassador for the only online magazine dedicated to African Americans in food, wine, and travel. The name of the magazine is Cuisine Noire Magazine. Website address is cuisinenoiremag.com. If you're an entrepreneur or business person wanting to get media promotion to elevate your business, I offer a service called Getting Media Coverage, where I help businesses and entrepreneurs get media promotion so they can elevate their business. Finally, you can catch me every Friday morning at 7:25 a.m. on WURD out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania's largest publicly owned Black radio station. It's an all-talk station. I'm part of a segment called Do You Know What Time It Is? Wrong platform. The Week That Was, with Ike Raw and Christopher Flood, the drummer Norris, where we talk about stories that made the news and stories that didn't make the news that should have made the news over the past week. They're on AM and FM in the Philadelphia area on radio. They're also at their website. You can also listen to them at their app and also through the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. Big shout out to Dr. Tachi for hanging in and enjoying most of this conversation. He says, great conversation. Thank you. Well, you are a great conversationalist too, Dr. Tachi, so right back at you. 3 last things. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Next up, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. And finally, block assumptions. Thank you so much for watching this live or on the replay. God bless, peace be well, keep the faith, and as we say, walk good. Night, everybody. What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning The Dr. Vibe Show. I have hosted and produced over 2,000 epic conversations over the last 10 years. And what makes our conversations epic? We don't do interviews. We do conversations.